Thank you so much for being with us, Harry Potter fans. We've got another chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are at Chapter 28, Be Wary.
Chapter 28, Be Wary. Chapter text. It was not at all difficult for Moody to arrange events so that when Harry, Ginny, Ron, and Hermione ambushed Mr. Crabbe and Mr. Goyle, the two Death Eaters were together. Harry waited, disillusioned, in the shadows just outside of the light from the nearest street lamp. They were in a very quiet suburb of London. The houses were few and far between. The four of them formed a loose square around the two men. Harry watched and waited until he saw the Imperius curse that Moody had placed them under lift. Their feet stopped shuffling, and the glassy look left their eyes. Before they could process their change in location, Harry sent two quick spells to block their access to their dark marks. "Good evening, Mr. Crabbe," Harry said pleasantly. He stepped toward them. "Good evening, Mr. Goyle." "Potter," Crabbe said dumbly. "It's Potter." "The Dark Lord will like this," Goyle grinned. Harry ducked the stunning spells that came his way. Now, there's no need to be rude." "Can't tell us what to do, Potter," Crabbe said. "Now, why don't you come along quietly? You don't stand a chance against us." While Crabbe spoke, Goyle surreptitiously slipped forward. Harry could not help but feel mildly impressed. He had thought that these two were complete idiots. He had even felt slightly disappointed that all the interesting Death Eaters were still in Azkaban. But the two had a sort of primitive, not intelligence. He would never think that about these fools. Instinct. They moved like animals on the hunt. "I'm not afraid of you two morons," Harry said coldly. He raised his wand. "Can't do magic outside of school," Crabbe said. "Ministry will find you." Harry grinned at him. "I'm not afraid of the trace, either. See, you two, stupid though you are adults. I could do all the magic I want around adults, and the Ministry won't have any idea. Isn't that wicked?" Harry threw up a magical shield so fast that the red light had barely left Goyle's wand. He took a moment to notice that these long months of training with Moody, Sirius, Remus, Tonks, and Dumbledore had improved his skills. He heard a slight sound and knew that the others had closed in. Two quick swirls of his wand, and Crabbe and Goyle were disarmed. Harry chuckled at the dumbfounded looks on their faces. Merlin knew that their sons came by it honestly. When Ginny and Ron revealed themselves, Harry watched with great pleasure as the mean looks slid off the faces of Crabbe and Goyle and were replaced with confusion and fear. They were outnumbered, and they knew it. Harry felt an immediate shift in the air pressure and knew that Hermione had successfully performed the anti-apparition jinx. "Voldemort," Harry said in a hard voice. Crabbe and Goyle flinched. "Voldemort has successfully turned the entire wizarding world against me. I have two friends. Their family hates me. He killed two people and successfully turned my three other friends against me. Unfortunately, I have been given the task of defeating Voldemort. Do not think that just because I'm hated and reviled that I'll give up. I don't care how much the stupid Ministry is willing to pay for me to be caught. I will defeat Voldemort." Harry allowed himself a small smile when the truth of his message sunk into their thick skulls. He had done what he could to protect Neville and Luna. It would have to be enough for now. "You can't defeat the Dark Lord, Potter," Goyle said. His face was twisted into an ugly grimace. He looked on the verge of attack, but he was apparently cognizant of the fact that three wands that he knew of were pointed at them. Harry shook his head. "You keep telling me what I can and can't do. I can't fight you, but look, you're disarmed. I can't do underage magic." He exaggeratedly looked around for Owl from the Ministry. "But I don't see any consequences of it now, do I?" Crabbe and Goyle appear to have no answer to this. "I may be almost alone," Harry said. "But he's got us," Ron said. "And if we die," Ginny added, "we'll be sure to take Voldemort down with us." "Maybe Mum and Dad will figure it out, that we're not evil," Ron said bitterly. Harry knew that it was only partially an act, and it made it all the more believable. "I don't care about Mum and Dad," Ginny said sharply. "They're fools who believe anything the effing Ministry tells them." "I'm not sure that I'll even forgive them," Harry said honestly. He turned back to Crabbe and Goyle, glad that the scripted performance was over. He narrowed his eyes, considering them. He was grimly satisfied to see that Crabbe was trembling. He suspected it was from fear rather than rage. "I have a message for you to take to Voldemort," Harry said conversationally. "Tell him that you're the last Death Eaters I meet up with who aren't going to die. And, believe me, I'm only letting you live so you can be my messengers." "Harry," Ron said, "there are two of them. Only one of them needs to carry the message," Ginny pointed out. "You could kill one of them right now." Harry pretended to think about it. "Don't be scared, Mr. Goyle," he said softly. "I couldn't imagine killing the fathers of boys I went to school with. Although, I never did like your sons much." "They are arseholes," Ron said agreeably. "Can't say I'm surprised," Ginny said. "Look at who they have for fathers. Death Eaters don't exactly set the best examples for their children." "That's not fair, Ginny," Ron said. "We're about as different from Mom and Dad as possible." "Quiet," Harry said, "while I decide what to do with them." He already knew exactly what he was going to do to them, but he did enjoy the sweat that shined on their faces. Goyle's beady little eyes were darting back and forth from side to side, obviously trying to see a way out. Crabbe kept clenching and unclenching his fist. Harry knew that he was trying to touch his dark mark, to summon Voldemort, but that would not happen until Harry was good and ready for it. First, he snapped their wands. "It's too bad you Death Eaters decided to kill Mr. Ollivander, isn't it?" Harry said. "Good luck finding another wand maker." "YYUCCC. I can't," Harry said. "I'm pretty sure that I just did." "Maybe," he said gently, "you should think before you kill. Although you won't be killing ever again." Harry gripped his wand tightly. He searched his own feelings again, wondering if this was the right thing to do. But then he thought about Mr. Lovegood and Mrs. Longbottom, and how they were gone forever. And he thought of how Crabbe and Goyle had laid waste to Muggles and magical folk alike during the height of Voldemort's powers. He did not feel even a prick of conscience, just regret at the necessity. "Ready?" he asked Ron, Ginny, and Hermione. He flicked his wand at Goyle, and he was bound so tightly that he could not move. He then turned his attention to Crabbe and said Legilimens at the same time as Ron, Ginny, and Hermione. It was remarkably easy to almost break them, though Harry felt wretched and ill after seeing the foul, evil memories. Goyle had killed a mother and 2 adolescents, and he had laughed while he had done it. Crabbe had used the Imperius curse to rape Muggle women. Goyle had once killed an old man using the bludgeoning hex. It had taken minutes for the man to die. He saw death, torture, and rape, and when the 4 of them brought the Death Eaters to the point of insanity by battering their mental walls with legilimency, Harry did not feel the slightest bit guilty. All 4 of them were breathing rather quickly. Harry trembled with rage. He longed to kill them for what they had done. "Ron, no," Ginny said loudly. She was holding Ron back. Harry could tell that Hermione had joined in the efforts. Ron's face was blank with rage as he fought the hold. "We can't kill them." Ron tried to shove her off. His face was blank with anger. A large part of Harry wanted nothing more than to help Ron kill them. But something about Ron's lack of control seemed to steady Harry, and he was able to take a step back from his swirling emotions. "Muffliato," Harry said, not wanting Voldemort to view this conversation through his own legilimency. "We can't kill them, Ron. Ginny's right. They have a message to deliver. Besides, Voldemort will probably kill them once he's done extracting their memories." Ron looked as though he were about to argue, but he forced himself to calm down. "I hope he does," Ron said savagely. "They won't be much use to him," Ginny pointed out. "Besides, one more use of legilimency, and they'll be completely insane. I can't imagine any of the other Death Eaters caring for them, or sending them to St. Mungo's. After what we've just seen, their wives almost certainly won't lift a finger to help." Ron's nostrils flared, and he paced, still breathing quite heavily. "They make me sick," he growled. "You're not alone," Harry said quietly. He stared down at the 2 Death Eaters. Their eyes were open and staring. They were not dead, but they were on the brink of insanity. Neither of them had ever learned anything more than rudimentary occlumency. Even Harry, who was not nearly as skilled at legilimency as Moody, Snape, or Dumbledore, had been able to batter through them on his second try. It had, however, taken all 4 of them to destroy the minds of Crabbe and Goyle. Certainly effective, Harry thought, but I'm not sure if I want to repeat the experience. Take the wards down, Harry said to Hermione, and grab Ron. We need to be ready to get out of here the moment those dark marks are touched. Actually, you could just leave now. We'll leave when you do, Harry, Ginny said firmly. Fine, Harry muttered. He pointed his wand at the Death Eaters. Imperio. He only waited a moment after forcing Crabbe to touch his dark mark before turning on the spot and operating away from the quiet street to Grimmauld Place. Ginny, Ron, and Hermione had arrived the instant before he had. It was, Harry noted, glancing at the grandfather clock, already past 2 in the morning, and he was dead tired. But Sirius was waiting for them in the kitchen, and Dumbledore was probably there as well. He sighed, thinking longingly of a bed, and turned to walk down to the basement. He knew the instant that Voldemort had used legilimency on Crabbe and Goyle, because he fell heavily against the wall. His scar burned like fire, and he in his veins pounded a rage that was not his own. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing the moment to pass. Ginny threw his arm over her shoulders and helped him to stand upright. Thanks, Harry murmured. Always, said Ginny. Crabbe and Goyle have been broken, Harry announced, walking into the kitchen. Sirius, Remus, Moody, Tonks, and Dumbledore looked up. Snape did not react. Harry knew that Snape, who had devised this plan, had expected no less. And Voldemort's found them already. I think it's safe to say that he got the message. We made it quite obvious that we're alone in this, Ginny said. So what do we do now? Ron asked. I mean, after we sleep for a while, do we wait for him to make another move? Who do you think he'll go after? I am not sure that he will go after anyone just yet, said Dumbledore. I think that he will now redouble his efforts to obtain the prophecy. Yeah, said Harry. That's what I thought, too. HP. Harry should have expected it. He should have realized that some things were probably just fated to happen, no matter what else had changed. All was quiet for nearly a month, though the tension at Grimmauld Place ran high. Harry felt as though his nerves had stretched almost to the breaking point, and he knew that the others felt the same way. He thanked Merlin for Dumbledore's army. He refused to think of it as Potter's army, and the outlet for release it offered. The students were coming along at almost a breakneck pace. Harry supposed that it had something to do with the way Moody prowled around, yelling at them. The members of Potter's army did not resent this. In fact, they embraced it. They read the Daily Prophet, and they knew that people were disappearing. They knew the truth. They knew that Voldemort was prowling the shadows and murdering those who would oppose him. He was blackmailing and jinxing people into following him. At least once a week, Harry found evidence of Voldemort in the pages of the Daily Prophet, and the students were just as aware. Sometimes, particularly after a long day of training with Moody, Harry startled awake in the middle of the night, certain that he had heard someone shout constant vigilance in his ear. Still, he found that he could not complain. With Hermione constantly forcing him to learn more and more new hexes and curses, and Moody relentlessly teaching him how to move quickly and decisively, Harry could not help but feel slightly astonished at the rate he improved. He wasn't the only one. All the underage members of the army were, and that included Ginny, Ron, and Hermione. After their thrice-weekly sessions, Harry generally glowed with pride and awe. Great job, Neville, Ron said enthusiastically during the second to last meeting before Christmas. Neville had successfully mastered the spell that caused quicksand to appear beneath the victim's feet. Harry beamed at him. It was a tough spell. I'll bet Luna could do it too, Harry said. Where is Luna, anyway? He craned his neck, thinking she might have arrived after they started practicing, and Harry simply hadn't noticed her. She's not feeling well, Neville said. Told me earlier that she wouldn't be here tonight. I hope she's all right, Hermione said worriedly. Tell her that if she doesn't feel better soon, she needs to go see Madame Pomfrey. I know she doesn't always think about stuff like that. I don't think she's physically ill, Neville said stiffly. Harry knew why. Neville had barely even mentioned the murder of his grandmother since it had happened, and if Luna was grieving for her dad, entirely understandable, as Christmas was swiftly approaching, Neville was probably uncomfortable with stating that plainly. He obviously did not want any of them to mention Augusta Longbottom's death. Ah, Harry said, glancing away from Neville and feeling more than a little uncomfortable himself. Well, I'll probably see her next time. We've got a gift for her. And you. But Luna was not there at the next meeting either, and they could not deliver the Book of Odd Creatures, written as a collaborative effort between Newt Scamander and his grandson, Rolf. Hermione had found for her while browsing through a catalog. Harry grimaced. He did not want Luna to feel like she was alone in her grief. He wanted to be there for her. Harry pulled his copy of the Marauder's map out of the pocket of his robes and opened it up. He stared at it, searching for Luna's dot. "Hey, Ginny, could you look for Luna on here?" he said in a low voice. "I think she's grieving for her dad." Ginny scanned it, though she was somewhat distracted by the fact that the other students were flying up into the air as if dangled by invisible hooks around her. "Good job, Dean," she said loudly. "I'm looking, Harry, but I don't." "Harry, it's almost 9, Hermione warned. Harry blew the whistle that ended the session. "Well done, everyone," he said. "You've come so far in such a small amount of time. Frankly, I'm amazed. We'll pick right back up after the holidays." "Merry Christmas, Harry," Seamus said loudly. There were loud choruses of Merry Christmas. The students filed out of the room in 2s and 3s, and Dumbledore, Sirius, and Moody left to meet Remus and Tonks for a drink in a private room at the Hogshead Inn. "Why were you looking for Luna, Harry?" Ginny asked. "Oh, Neville said on Monday that she was having a hard time about her dad," Harry said. "I was going to try to talk to her, or maybe deploy Hermione and you to do it for me. I don't like the idea of her crying all by herself. Everyone deals with grief differently." "Harry," Hermione said gently, "I think it's possible that Luna just needs privacy." "I suppose," Harry said. Harry did not think that any of them, except, perhaps, Sirius, were looking forward to this Christmas. Ginny grew paler and more thoughtful the closer they came to the holiday. Ron grew more irritable, and he and Hermione took to snapping at each other to relieve their tension. Privately, Harry thought that they could do a lot more good for each other if they just made love, but he had never pretended to understand their relationship. For days before Christmas, Harry yawned widely and shoved away the Evening Prophet. The news had nothing to say about what had happened to Crabbe and Goyle. Harry suspected that whatever had been done to them had been done quietly. Good, Harry thought. One less complication with the Ministry. He shoved his chair back from the table, said goodnight to Moody and Remus, and fled back over to the house in Godric's Hollow. Ginny was toweling her hair dry when Harry entered their room. "I just talked to Luna," she said sleepily. "She says she's doing all right. I told her that we're here for her if we need her." Harry pulled off his robes and, wearing only boxers, slipped underneath the bedclothes. A naked Ginny joined him, and he wrapped his arms around her and nuzzled her hair. "Good night, Bright Eyes," he said. He closed his eyes and made certain that his obfuscamancy shield was as strong as he could make it. He did not think that Voldemort would attempt to gain the prophecy this night, but it was possible that Voldemort could decide to send Nagini a day earlier than last time. "Good night, Harry," sighed Ginny. Harry drifted off to sleep, feeling quite warm and pleasant. He smiled while he slept. He had peaceful dreams for once. Ginny was laughing, and everyone in Potter's, Dumbledore's army had joined them on a picnic in the Forest of Dean. Daphne Greengrass claimed that she was the Queen of Slytherin, and Harry thought that was so true and yet so hilarious at the same time. And then he was a snake gliding across the floor toward a door. A red-haired man slept against it, head drooping and mouth slightly open. The snake, Harry, stopped and eyed him warily. Nagini was not supposed to deviate from what she was supposed to do. She was not here to kill this man. The red-haired man grunted and woke with a start. Nagini did not give him time to react or to grab the stick that made magic, so she attacked. Her jaws locked onto him once, twice, and once more. The man was screaming, and then he was still. Harry pulled himself out of the vision with immense effort. He sat up. Ginny had her hand on his shoulder, and her eyes were wide with fright. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he leapt from the bed. He was already turning on the spot when he said, "Your dad," and disapparated. He thanked Merlin that the Ministry was not yet so paranoid that they had blocked all apparition from the outside. Harry was just 15 years old, after all, and he could not be expected to know how to apparate. The atrium was completely deserted, for which Harry was extremely grateful. The ground flew by beneath his feet, and his arms pumped as he sprinted to the elevator. While the lift moved with inexorable slowness, Harry realized that he still wore only his underwear. He grimaced, pulled them off, and transfigured them into robes. They were scratchy and tight, but they covered him much better than his underwear had. Now is not the time to be modest, Harry told himself firmly. Still, he felt more comfortable in the robes. The lift doors opened, and Harry sprinted out of them and down the corridor. He could see the snake, and he could see Arthur Weasley lying in a pool of his own blood. He was still meters away when he sent the bludgeoning hex at Nagini. She was in constant, writhing motion, and the spell missed her. So did the next and the next. Frustrated, Harry whispered Avada Kedavra. But the fact that she was also a living vessel for a Horcrux protected her, as he had known it would. Nagini would never allow herself to be sacrificed so that Voldemort might be defeated. "Stop, I commanded," Harry told her in Parseltongue. He dare not look down at Arthur any more than he had. Voldemort was watching. He could not let him know that he cared. "Stay away from the prophecy." "I did not obey you," Nagini hissed. Harry raised his wand and brought it crashing down with a force that sent the snake flying several feet. "Someone will hear that," Harry smiled. "I've just set off the wards." Harry circled her warily. She still did not attempt to escape, nor did she attempt to retrieve the prophecy. He slipped a little in Mr. Weasley's blood. He stared down at the red-haired man. He did not look well. Harry would have to leave and take him to St. Mungo's. Anger battled with his conscience. It was stupid and useless, but Harry suddenly hated everything about the man, including the way he was bleeding to death, and could not do anything to save himself. And because of that, Harry ignored the fact that he could not kill Nagini this night anyway. Harry would have to let a Horcrux go free. He watched, nostrils flaring, when Nagini slithered away, called back to her master. He sent a blasting hex and a bludgeoning hex after her, and felt a little better when he saw it hurt her. Pieces of the floor were gouged away. The otherwise silent corridor sounded as if it were being attacked by a demolition crew. Harry practically screamed the curses, wanting to make her bleed, yet not wanting to tip off Voldemort that he was attacking Horcruxes that had not yet replaced the locket in the potion. Harry knelt, staring at the wound. He had little knowledge of healing, but he knew that it was dangerous for him to move Mr. Weasley without at least attempting to staunch the blood. Harry wished he could remember the spell Snape had used long ago when Harry had attacked Draco Malfoy with Sectum Sempra. But he could not. He must work quickly before he was joined by Aurors. "Skeepy," Harry said. It was a very weak spell meant to stop paper cuts and the like. But Harry thought that the wound had closed a little. He siphoned off most of the blood and stared, aghast at the deep wound and the crushed ribs. "Skeepy, Skeepy, Skeepy." He was just about to take Mr. Weasley to St. Mungo's, hoping that he had been able to do enough, when several things happened at once. His only warning was a quiet shuffle, and a deep voice said, "Stupefy." Harry had no time to raise his wand to defend himself. The red light arced toward him from Kingsley Shacklebolt's wand, and someone shouted, "Protego," and the shield charm blossomed in front of Harry, who felt deep confusion. He did not know that voice. It was not any member of the Order of the Phoenix, not even those such as Daedalus Diggle or Hestia Jones, who did not know the full secret. It was, in fact, like no other voice he had heard before. Harry could not even tell if it was male or female, as if it had been magically disguised. Before he could react, something tumbled in the air and struck Harry on the shoulder and bounced away. A small hourglass. Harry took his eyes from it with effort. "Kingsley," he said, "listen, Arthur Weasley is badly hurt. A giant snake got him. We need to get him to St. Mungo's." Kingsley did not answer, but kept his wand pointed straight at Harry's head. As soon as the shield charm fell, Harry would be stunned, and it would be over. Everything would be over. Harry did not think he would survive the trip to Azkaban, not with Lucius Malfoy, as politically powerful as he was. "Kingsley," Harry said desperately, "if there's anything Anything at all that makes you think maybe this situation is not what you think. If you have doubts about anything, help me get Arthur Weasley to St. Mungo's, and I'll tell you everything." They stared at each other for long moments. Harry became increasingly aware that the spell he had used was failing, and Mr. Weasley was bleeding as heavily as before. Kingsley appeared to be searching for something, anything. He furrowed his brow and lowered his wand. "Get the Aurors here," Harry said. "The watch needs to stay. That prophecy has got to be guarded." "But—" Harry gestured at Mr. Weasley. "No time. I'm not sure I trust you," Kingsley said. "But you do," Harry said. "Just a little, but that's enough." "Give me your wand," Kingsley said. Harry considered him. They needed to get to St. Mungo's. Kingsley was not firing hexes at him, but the Auror was still wary. Harry did not like the idea of handing over his only weapon, but Kingsley was honorable, and he had already extended his trust. He handed it over, grimacing. Kingsley looked stunned, and he frowned at Harry's wand and pocketed it. Harry said. "How are we going to get to St. Mungo's?" "Head up to the atrium and apparate there." "Hold on a moment," Kingsley said distractedly. He pulled out what looked like a silver pocket watch. He tapped out a message, and it flared brightly. "I'm alerting Scrimgeour and the others. And no, I'm a senior member of the Auror department. I can apparate all of us from here. Will you disillusion me?" Harry asked. Kingsley stepped toward him and with one hand, gripped Harry's shoulder, and with the other, tapped Harry's head with his wand. Harry felt the cold, trickling sensation spread from his head down his body. "Don't think of disappearing," Kingsley said, though he did not seem to think that Harry actually would. "I've got you. Reach down and grab Arthur." Harry reached for his wife's father. As he did so, he noticed the hourglass that had hit him. He grabbed that as well. A second after he had Mr. Weasley's shoulder in a tight grip, Kingsley whirled them away into crushing darkness. Before Harry even had time to blink at the quiet street outside the perpetually closed department store, which was actually the hospital for witches and wizards in Britain, Kingsley hit him with the body-bind curse and propped Harry up against the wall. "Stupid," Harry thought angrily, cursing himself. "You just had to blindly trust him, didn't you? Just because he's Kingsley doesn't mean he's an ally. But why did he take me with him? He could have disabled me before he left. I could be already sitting in front of Scrimgeour, and, fudge, the Dementors could be on their way." These rather circular thoughts of self-anger and confusion kept him company for the long minutes that he was alone. Kingsley returned after an absence of maybe 20 minutes. "Talk, Potter." "Not here," Harry hissed. "It isn't safe here. If you think I'm going to let you lead me into a trap," Kingsley began. "Not a trap," Harry said. "I'll make any kind of vow you want. I wouldn't trap you. Listen, apparate us to 7, Skyview Lane, Godric's Hollow." Kingsley considered this. He pulled out that silver pocket watch again. "See this?" he said. "This allows me to communicate instantly with Scrimgeour and the other senior members of the Auror department. All I have to do is tap it with my wand. If you attempt to ambush or threaten me in any way, I will send this message, and I will give them your location." Harry decided not to tell Kingsley that Sirius House was protected with the Fidelius charm, and the Aurors would be completely incapable of finding Harry. Instead, he nodded. Kingsley gripped his arm again, turned on the spot, and moments later, he and Kingsley stood in front of Sirius House. Harry grimaced when he saw that it blazed with light, and he heard voices shouting. "Walk in front of me, Potter," Kingsley said. He seemed completely stoic, as if the fact that Harry had a house full of concerned allies did not surprise him one bit. Harry admired that. Merlin knew that he had to work on appearing emotionless. It was not for nothing that he had difficulties with occlumency. "They aren't going to hurt you," Harry said. "In fact, I reckon that everyone will be so happy to see you that they'll forget to be angry with me." Kingsley didn't reply. He marched behind Harry and up the walk into the door. "I don't care what he says. Harry could be in danger." Ginny shouted. "The Aurors. We're on alert. According to Scrimgeour," Tonks said. Kingsley stiffened. "We would know if—" "Or he's already dead," bellowed Ron. Harry pushed open the door, bracing himself for the explosion that would come. "Hi, everyone. Look who I brought with me. Arthur's all right, by the way. He's in St. Mungo's. Voldemort didn't get the prophecy. Ginny and Ron spun around in the foyer. They were completely furious. Harry repressed the urge to take a large step back, escape, and hide out until their anger ran its course. Right now, they were yelling at Tonks, but in about 3 seconds, they would have a new target. Harry. Sirius, Remus, Tonks, and Hermione stood together, all in their night things, some distance apart from Ginny and Ron. "Look," Harry said again, when the silence became too uncomfortable. "I brought Kingsley with me." "Nymphadora Tonks," Kingsley said. "What in Merlin's name are you doing here?" "Doing my best to help this lot defeat Voldemort," Tonks said. "And don't call me Nymphadora." "So it's true?" Kingsley asked. Harry studied him carefully. He looked unwell, but he did not appear shocked. "You know who is back." One by one, everyone nodded. Kingsley sat down on the sofa, still clutching 2 wands in his fist. "I've thought this might be the case for a while," he said softly, as though speaking to himself. Death Eaters who escaped Azkaban at the end of last year suddenly congregating again. Yaxley and the Carrows having dark marks. Scrimgeour and Fudge were so certain it was you, Potter. But it didn't make sense. "Good to know that my protege isn't a booby like everyone else at the Ministry," Moody growled. Kingsley gaped at him. "Don't look at me like that, Shacklebolt. A mad Death Eater was impersonating me last year. He's the one dead, not me." "How but—" Kingsley stammered. "What in Merlin's name is going on? Will someone tell Dumbledore that we need his pensieve?" Harry grinned. Some 3 hours later, Kingsley emerged from the pensieve, ashen-faced and blinking rather abruptly. Harry, who had spent the last hour being lectured by everyone else that he was not to ever do what he just did again, was extremely relieved to see him return. Ginny glowered at him. She had not accepted his explanation for leaving her behind. She seemed to think that he shouldn't have cared that she'd been naked. "Did you want your father to die?" Harry finally said loudly. "No," Ron said immediately. "Don't try to turn this around on us. You just left. You didn't say anything to anyone." "I didn't have time," Harry said. "It's true," Ginny said reluctantly. "He didn't even pull on his robes. That isn't a bad transfiguration job, Harry." "Thanks," Harry said. "Listen, nothing bad happened. Your dad's all right. Voldemort didn't get the prophecy, and he hasn't figured out that I can see into his mind. And the Aurors will likely double the security, so Voldemort will think twice about going to get it until we're ready for him to try." And Kingsley found out. "So tell me, did I fail completely?" "You know you didn't," Ron flared up immediately. "But you got to stop running off by yourself. You aren't alone, Harry." "I know," Harry said sharply. "I know that I'm not alone. I'm sorry if I thought it best to get there as quickly as possible. And if you were that worried, you could have joined me. You don't need an engraved invitation, Ron." "Thanks, I wondered about that," Ron said sarcastically. "We didn't exactly know where you were. We knew it wasn't the Burrow, but you weren't expecting it to happen again," Harry said in a more subdued voice. "Do they always do this?" Kingsley asked Tonks. "Usually only when they've been drinking," Tonks replied. "Though they've been having a bit of a rough time the last month. We're sitting right here," Ron and Harry said in unison. Hermione snorted, and Ginny hid a smile. "Harry," Remus said, "I'm sure that Kingsley has quite a few questions for all of us. Perhaps we could wait until later to keep fighting." They all answered probing questions until dawn. There was a rosy glow that did not come from the lamps, which had remained lit through the night, but from the lightening sky. Harry was barely able to keep his eyes propped open, and his voice was starting to slur. He knew that Ron felt the same exhaustion, and neither would have the energy to carry on their argument. He glanced over at him. Ron and Hermione were sitting together in an armchair. Harry met Ron's eyes, and Ron gave half a shrug and a grimace that Harry took to mean, "I forgive you, but I'll pound you if you do it again." "So which of you were helping Harry tonight?" Kingsley asked. Harry bolted upright, cursing himself for being so stupid. But with Kingsley and Arthur, he'd completely forgotten his mysterious benefactor. "It wasn't any of them," Harry said. He turned to Dumbledore. "Professor." "Harry, we have gone through this any number of times," Dumbledore said. "You are no longer one of my students. You are to call me by my first name." "Sorry, Albus." Harry found it quite as difficult to be familiar with Dumbledore as others did saying Voldemort's name. "Kingsley was about to stupefy me, and someone threw up a shield charm." I couldn't tell who it was. Whoever it was had a very good disguise. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman. Everyone gaped at him. Harry, you're serious? Sirius asked. Yes, Harry said. And whoever was threw this at me. Harry pulled the hourglass out of the pocket of his robes. On closer inspection, he realized that his original perception of the object was correct. But Harry, Hermione said, that's a time turner. What the? When the name of Merlin's left nut does that mean? Ron asked loudly. Harry met Dumbledore's eyes. There was no hint of the familiar twinkle, only evidence that the intelligent brain behind them was working very hard. Harry waited. He did not expect the older wizard to know what this meant, but he trusted Dumbledore's guesses more than almost anyone else's certainty. I think, Dumbledore said slowly, there is someone else who knows about the time travel.
Thanks for being with us, Harry Potter fans. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. Here we are with Chapter 29, Execution.
Chapter 29, Execution. Chapter text. Harry Potter infiltrates the Ministry of Magic by Aggie Lafferty. Late Thursday night, Harry Potter was seen attempting to break into the Department of Mysteries and retrieve the prophecy protected there. It was only a matter of time, Albus Dumbledore said. Indeed, he had set the watch on it the moment it became clear that Potter is a dark wizard on the level with he who must not be named. We are only lucky that Potter was interrupted by Auror Kingsley Shacklebolt. The Auror Department has only given the Daily Prophet the barest of details. At approximately 11:30 at night, the wards indicating intrusive use of magic in the corridor leading to the Department of Mysteries flared up. Shacklebolt was the first Auror on the scene. Yes, I saw Potter, all right, Shacklebolt said. I chased him down and caught him just as he apparat away. Yes, he knows how to apparate, and I almost contained him before he shook me off and left. We at the Daily Prophet would like to commend Shacklebolt's bravery in following Potter alone. There was only one injury. Arthur Weasley, for a review of the disappearance of his youngest children, see page 7, was admitted to St. Mungo's at 11:43 and treated for a rather serious snake bite. As it is not secret that the Ministry is requiring the door to the Department of Mysteries to be guarded by all members, the Daily Prophet is convinced that Weasley received his injuries during Harry Potter's attempt to discover his terrible power. Weasley is unavailable for comment. The room of requirement buzzed with questions and speculation, and Harry could hear it halfway down the steep corridor that connected Hogwarts to the Hog's Head Inn. The Christmas holidays were over, and the members of Potter's army were eager to resume their thrice-weekly training. They were so eager, in fact, that classes had not even begun yet. Harry, however, suspected that the others were not speaking about new spells. Harry, is it true? Hannah Abbott asked excitedly. Did you really go to the Ministry of Magic? He did, Ron confirmed. Voldemort. Oh, for the love of Merlin. Are we going to have to sit in a circle and practice saying the name again? Was trying to get to the prophecy. How did you know? Seamus asked. Harry paused. He could not tell the truth. That would only lead to uncomfortable questions. Harry trusted all of them a great deal, and he knew that they would not betray him. But Harry knew that the truth could be more of a burden than anyone suspected. Likewise, he could not claim that he had a spy in Voldemort's camp. We had someone watching, Harry finally said. Yeah, me, because I'm a Horcrux and I can see inside Voldemort's mind. Ron, Ginny, was it your dad? Lavender Brown asked. Is he really working with you? And just pretending that he's not? Harry clenched his jaw. No, the Weasleys are most certainly not working with us. Rage curdled in his stomach. Mrs. Weasley had not even bothered sending Christmas sweaters to Ron and Ginny. She'd apparently written them off, like they weren't even her children anymore. It filled him with a fury so intense that it frightened him a little. His exile from the burrow had broken his heart, but seeing Ron and Ginny so hurt and heartbroken themselves felt like a sectum sempra to the kidneys. Oh, sorry, Lavender said in a small voice. Just don't mention them again in front of him. Ron jerked his thumb at Harry. That would probably be wise, Dumbledore agreed. Let's get to work, Harry said shortly. Get into pairs, everyone. We aren't going to learn anything new tonight. Instead, we're going to duel each other with what we know. Last man, or woman, standing is the winner. He turned automatically to face Ginny, but his eyes caught on Dumbledore. He crooked his finger at Harry. "It is time," Dumbledore said, "for us to duel." "I won't stand a chance," Harry said immediately. Dumbledore cocked his head. "Certainly not with that attitude, Harry. You knew this day would come sooner or later. You knew that you would have to test your skills against me before you face Voldemort." Harry supposed that he had known that he would duel with Dumbledore. He'd watched him carefully during the times the headmaster was able to assist with training the students, and he'd listened attentively to what Dumbledore had to teach. He just thought that he'd have a while longer. Perhaps in a few years it would not be quite so humiliating. As it was now, Harry gave himself about 30 seconds. "Before we begin," Dumbledore said, "I would like for you to practice occlumency. Rid yourself of your anger toward the Weasleys. Anger only has a place in a duel between fools." Harry closed his eyes and determinedly trapped the swirling, giddy rage and pain that constituted his feelings for Ginny's and Ron's mother and father. He locked them away, for now, and gathered his thoughts, already desperately wondering how he would not make a complete arse of himself in front of pretty much everyone he loved. "All right," he said finally. He pretended not to notice that no one had moved. He'd much rather duel Dumbledore without an audience. And Dumbledore not only had age and immense skill, he had the Elder Wand. He stared at the wand in question and felt slightly ill. They bowed to each other, and something funny happened. Harry felt his eyes shift behind his glasses, and it was almost as though he was facing someone he did not know. He only vaguely realized that it was Albus Dumbledore he faced. Dumbledore threw the first spell, and Harry brought up a shield charm so quickly that the older wizard had to duck his own rebounding curse. Harry leaned to the right, pointed his wand, and jerked it upward, saying Levi Corpus inside his head. Dumbledore's foot caught, but there was a bang, and despite the fact that the spell had hit, he remained on his own 2 feet. Harry sent 2 more mild hexes at Dumbledore in quick succession, both of which the other wizard dodged. "Are you a schoolboy playing little tricks?" Moody roared. "Go after him, Potter!" Indignant, Harry raised his wand and sent 3 Rictum Semperas at Dumbledore, who easily countered them shield charms. Then, in one swift motion, he pointed his wand at the floor beneath Dumbledore's feet and turned it into quicksand. The next second, he sent a hex that caused the rapidly sinking wizard to double over coughing. Harry thought quickly. Dumbledore would surely counter this. How could he, Harry, disable him long enough to win the duel? Dumbledore's next hex hit Harry on the left arm, and he found himself spinning through the air in an out-of-control spiral. Harry whispered the cushioning charm, and as soon as he landed on his bum, he cast the spell that would turn Dumbledore to smoke. It only partially worked. Harry had hit Dumbledore in the left leg, and only that leg turned insubstantial. Harry dove under an arc of orange light and threw up a shield charm to protect himself from the other. He rolled to the side, aimed a blasting hex that would destroy the ground in front of Dumbledore and obscure his vision for a moment. He took that opportunity to leap to his feet. Harry sent 2 more mild hexes at Dumbledore in quick succession, both of which the other wizard dodged. "Are you a schoolboy playing little tricks?" Moody roared. "Go after him, Potter!" Indignant, Harry raised his wand and sent 3 Rictum Semperas at Dumbledore, who easily countered them shield charms. Then, in one swift motion, he pointed his wand at the floor beneath Dumbledore's feet and turned it into quicksand. The next second, he sent a hex that caused the rapidly sinking wizard to double over coughing. Harry thought quickly. Dumbledore would surely counter this. How could he, Harry, disable him long enough to win the duel? Dumbledore's next hex hit Harry on the left arm, and he found himself spinning through the air in an out-of-control spiral. Harry whispered the cushioning charm, and as soon as he landed on his bum, he cast the spell that would turn Dumbledore to smoke. It only partially worked. Harry had hit Dumbledore in the left leg, and only that leg turned insubstantial. Harry dove under an arc of orange light and threw up a shield charm to protect himself from the other. He rolled to the side, aimed a blasting hex that would destroy the ground in front of Dumbledore and obscure his vision for a moment. He took that opportunity to leap to his feet. and he was thrown backward by a bludgeoning hex that hurt Harry's shoulder quite a lot. He grimaced, threw up a shield charm, and stood up again. What did Dumbledore do when he dueled with Voldemort at the Ministry? Harry took a split second to look around the room. He spied the cushions Potter's army generally used to soften landings, levitated one of them, and blew it apart right over Dumbledore's head. He tried to use that advantage, but Dumbledore was too fast, and Harry found himself unable to move his legs. Protego! Harry shouted. Finite incantatum! As soon as he could move again, he danced out of the way of another jinx. He felt a tiny surge of pride. He'd lasted far longer than he had expected to. Incendiarmus! A whip made of flames issued from Harry's wand and circled Dumbledore like a glowing lasso. It was that moment that changed the duel. They had mostly been using relatively harmless jinxes and mild hexes, but Harry's use of a curse that could potentially hurt Dumbledore took it to another level. Harry found himself dodging not only bodybind curses, but a sickly purple spell that burned Harry's left hand rather severely and caused it to swell to twice its normal size. Harry did not know how long it actually lasted, only that toward the end he was stumbling with exhaustion, and it was with relief that he succumbed to the malignant black ropes that stung and trapped him. You win, Harry croaked. He was trembling, and his entire body was coated with sweat. The ropes immediately disappeared. Dumbledore tapped his wand against Harry's hand, and it stopped throbbing. That was truly excellent, Harry, Dumbledore said. Your skills have grown immensely over the past year. When we do this again, Harry said, will you teach me how to beat you? Dumbledore laughed. I will try, though I think you only need more practice, perhaps a larger repertoire, though I believe Hermione is helping you with that. Yeah, Harry said, and I definitely need to work on breaking hexes. He paused, and then lowered his voice. Usually, I fight to the death, you know. No way to counter that. Practice every day, Dumbledore advised. And whenever you come to teach Potter's army, I will duel you. Come a time to set the pretty trap. You will be ready to face Voldemort long enough to achieve our aims. Harry nodded. He looked around, noticing for the first time that everyone in the room, excluding Moody, was gaping at him. Even Ginny, Ron, Hermione, Neville, Luna, and Sirius, all of whom knew very well that he was not actually a 15-year-old, looked far too awed and impressed. Harry could not deny, however, that he felt no small measure of pride that he had held his own against Dumbledore for entire minutes. Blimey, Harry, Dean grinned at him. Is that what you're teaching us to do? If I can do it, you can, Harry said. Very good, King Arthur, Luna said in a dreamy voice. Harry gazed at her, eyes slightly narrowed. After Dumbledore had made his announcement that he suspected that someone else knew about the time travel, Harry had thought it might be his dreamy, otherworldly friend. Not that he thought she would ever betray them in a million years. Luna never would. But Luna was known for her absolute honesty and bluntness. If, perhaps, her father had asked her point-blank whether or not Harry, Ron, and Ginny were time travelers, she would have told him. And Zeno might have told someone else before he had been murdered. It would explain the fact that he had supported Harry, despite the fact that Harry had only met him once. He opened his mouth to ask her, but she drifted away to practice against Neville before he could. He thought of following her, but he did not know precisely what he wanted to say. He would have to assure her that even if she did, he had full faith in her, but she mustn't do it again. Perhaps if she had told her father, she also might know who it had been. Harry wanted to thank whoever it was, for he was certain that they were on his side. All right, Harry, Colin Creevey asked, beaming up at him. That was some duel. It was really something. Thanks, Colin, Harry said. Have you been practicing your stunning spell? I noticed last time that you could work on your aim. There's a trick to it. You know, it's in the way you hold your wand. Harry helped Colin grasp his wand to maximize the power of stunning spells. He then demonstrated, in slow motion, how shield charms could be used both offensively and defensively to Padma, Parvati, and Daphne. Hannah and Ernie called him over to have him explain how Sectum Sempra could be used to different effects. By the time the bell clanged, signaling that the students had to be in their common rooms in half an hour, Harry had decided that he would wait to talk to Luna. The students slowly began to drift away until only Neville was left. He shuffled his feet and stared around the room so much that Harry thought he might have something important to say. So Harry waited patiently. Ron was less patient. "Spit it out, Neville." Neville grimaced and lifted his chin. "I need more essence of Murtlap," he said. Harry scowled. "And if you could ask Snape, I think I need an antidote to truth serum. She called me into her office over the holidays, and I think she tried to get me to talk. But I got real suspicious. She hates me. What was she doing offering me tea and biscuits? So I didn't drink it, but I don't think I can trick her any longer." Harry, Ron, and Ginny exchanged looks of deep loathing that they reserved solely for Voldemort, Bellatrix Lestrange, Peter Pettigrew, and Umbridge. "I'll tell Snape you need it," Harry assured him. "He's supposed to stop by tonight. You got potions tomorrow, right? He'll get it to you then." "Neville, I'm so—" "Don't be sorry," Neville said firmly. "Just don't be surprised if I eventually kill her." Harry raised his brows, though he ought to not be surprised that his friend had been shaken badly enough by the death of his grandmother that it had brought out a vicious side in him. Merlin knew that the same had happened to Harry. He felt a small pang of wistfulness for the fact that remaining innocent was no longer an option. "I won't be," Ron assured him. "Just don't be surprised if we help you do it." Harry knew well enough that the moment Voldemort found out that his mind was connected to Harry's, there would be pain and nausea. Therefore, the night that 13 Death Eaters were to escape from Azkaban prison, Harry sat in a bathroom to avoid projectile vomiting on anything or anyone that would not be easy to clean. Ginny sat with him in silence, offering the comfort of her presence. Dumbledore and the others kept vigil in the other room. Snape was the only one not there, as he would be participating in the breakout. However, that was only to be expected. "What time is it?" Harry asked Ginny. 11:10, she answered promptly. "Less than an hour." "How'd your conversation with Luna go?" Harry asked casually. "Not this again, Harry." Ginny rolled her eyes. "Luna didn't tell anyone. She swore she wouldn't." "Why can't you just trust her?" "Who else would have told?" Harry asked. "I'm not angry with Luna. Whoever she told. If she told, that is, help me. I'm well aware that Kingsley would have stunned me, and I'd be dead by now if it weren't for that shield charm." "How many times have we gone through this?" Ginny asked with exaggerated patience. "It's March, Harry. That happened in December, and we've exhausted all venues. And we only know two things for sure, same as we did the night you came back from the ministry. The person helped you, and he or she knows about the time travel." "But who?" "I don't know," Ginny said, "but everyone swore that they wouldn't tell anyone, and I believe them. Luna swore too." "Maybe it happened accidentally," Harry said. "Maybe she just let something slip. You know how she is." "You think she'd betray us without even realizing it?" Ginny asked incredulously. "No," Harry replied. "No, I don't know. She was so young when she found out. It was so long ago." Ginny smacked him upside the head. He winced and rubbed at it. "Ouch," he glared. "I don't see why you're so irritated that I think it's a possibility that Luna lets something slip. She might have said something to her father. He might have told one of his friends. I don't know, Ginny. She just seems the most likely person to have done it." "I think it's far likelier that someone guessed," Ginny said. "Sometimes I think Ron's right, and it might be Percy." Harry shrugged. "It's possible, I suppose." He gave her a significant look, showing her how reasonable he could be about other people's opinions. "But do you really think that if Percy knew, he wouldn't have approached us about it? It has come to my attention that you are, in fact, time travelers from the future," Ginny said in an amazingly accurate imitation of Percy's pompous manner. "I will, of course, do everything I can to assist you in the downfall of he who must not be named." "Yeah," Ginny added in her natural voice. "It doesn't seem like him to stay in the shadows. It doesn't seem like anyone from my family. Actually," Harry did not say anything. Ginny knew him well enough to guess his thoughts. He did not need to spell them out for her and hurt her worse. It was Harry's opinion that the Weasleys not only did not have the personalities to keep something like this a secret, but they did not have the inclination to do so in this time. He looked at her, and he saw the fierce, blazing look upon her face, and he felt a rush of gratitude that she was so able to read him that words sometimes seemed completely unnecessary. He didn't have to hide what he thought from her. She usually knew. And she understood that sometimes talking about something just made it far, far worse. Her gaze dropped to his lips, and he leaned away, shaking his head. Not now. I don't want to feel him inside my head when I'm kissing you. Later, then, Ginny said. Without a doubt, Harry told her. It was 2 minutes past midnight when Harry's scar throbbed and twisted with a pain so fierce that he thought his head might cleave in two. It only made it worse that Harry had deliberately opened himself up to this, but he gritted his teeth against the pain and dove into Voldemort's thoughts. Voldemort had never doubted that it would not be long before the Dementors joined him. He had always laughed at the stupidity of the Ministry and their strict restrictions on the use of Dementors. Did they not realize what splendid creatures they were? They were more powerful, more deadly, than the tallest giant or the strongest troll. They did not have to put any effort whatsoever into terrifying enemies. Wizards feared the Dementor's kiss almost as much as they feared Lord Voldemort, and the Ministry was stupid enough to chain these creatures to a prison. Lord Voldemort would show them the error of their ways tonight. The Dementors had allied themselves with him. They had agreed to free his most trusted followers. Lord Voldemort would have his best lieutenants besides Severus Snape and Lucius Malfoy once more. The icy spray of the ocean hit Voldemort's face as he stood waiting for the others to join him. He laughed out loud, wildly, and for a long time. The Potter boy was even more foolish than the Ministry. He had unwittingly saved the life of Severus Snape and sealed his own eventual doom. Voldemort laughed again and stroked Nagini's head. The foolish child had no idea what he was up against, had no idea that Voldemort was the most powerful wizard in the world. He still did not have the prophecy, but neither did Potter. And after tonight, Potter would be even more reviled than he already was. His servant Aggie Lafferty would be certain to smear Potter's name even more. The breakout of Azkaban would drive another nail into Potter's coffin. Voldemort watched as small pinpricks of light danced toward him from the direction of the island fortress. Bellatrix Lestrange, Annan and Dolohov, Rodolphius and Rabaston. They all were coming to meet him, the very best of the followers he had before. Giddy glee rose up inside him. Harry pushed at the connection, fighting against the physical agony in his scar. The moment he felt Voldemort's awareness of him, the moment the glee turned to astonishment and rage, Harry pulled back and found himself once more sitting on the cool tile. He threw up his obfuscamancy shields as tightly as he could, and he leaned over the toilet and retched up everything he had eaten that day. He looked over at Ginny, whose bright eyes were wide and dark in her pale face. He knows, Harry said grimly. He'll try to use me to set the trap. We'll just have to figure out the bait. Kingsley and Tonks were extremely instrumental in tracking down Aggie Lafferty without him being any the wiser. Not only did they learn his personal habits, but the baby Death Eater was stupid enough to meet 5 of his other comrades at a set time each week. 6 birds, 1 stone, Harry thought grimly. He, Ron, and Ginny stood staring at the squalid little house in a dumpy little town. They were not, however, alone. Sirius had joined them. Dead men, after all, could not bring back word that Harry Potter was not quite as alone as Voldemort thought. Hermione was not with them, and Harry was not surprised that she had stayed behind to search through ancient tomes Dumbledore had found for her. She was not ready yet, and a part of Harry hoped that she never would be, to see the 4 of them set out to deliberately kill. It did not sit easily with Harry, either, despite the fact that he knew it would come to this. He had not lied to Crabbe and Goyle. All right, mate, Ron said quietly. I will be, Harry said. He's dangerous. And Snape says that Voldemort gets more and more followers every day. If we don't start weeding them out. His voice trailed away. It was difficult for him to act as executioner, but the words of Arthur Weasley, the Arthur who had been, before the world had changed completely, gave him determination. Also, Harry cared more about the victims, past and future, of the Death Eaters more than he did raising his wand to kill. If it is any consolation, Harry, Sirius said, your father also knew the necessity of killing, and Harry glanced at him. Dumbledore said, last time, that he would not have wanted you and Remus to become murderers just because of Peter Pettigrew. Sirius looked thoughtful. There's a difference, I think, between killing because of vengeance and killing to prevent evil witches and wizards from grasping even more power. I know. Harry gave him a small smile. I'm glad you figured that out too. Raucous laughter issued from the open windows of the squalid house, and the scent of alcohol mixed with potions wafted past Harry's nostrils. The somewhat balmy early April night, Harry realized with a small start that the next day was Easter, made the smell even more unpleasant. He scowled with disgust, and not because of the stench. Let's do this, Harry said grimly. Go around the back, Sirius. Sirius was already creeping around the side of the house. Ron and Ginny secured the windows, and Harry threw up an anti-apparition jinx. The only thing they had to worry about was the flu. Moody had told them that the hearth was located in the sitting room. If the Death Eaters were quick enough, one or more could escape before Harry could destroy the flu powder, which was why he did not blast open the door. Instead, he opened it quietly and placed a silence shield around him, Ginny and Ron. Harry grimaced as they passed silently through the hall. The Death Eater journalist lived like a pig. The house had a stench of spoiled food and unwashed body. They navigated around stacks of newspapers and piles of trash. Moments after they entered, they reached the door of the sitting room. Aggie Lafferty, short and balding, roared with laughter at something Jack Butler, a Death Eater who specialized in the more delicate poisons, had just said. Simon Mountney leaned casually against the mantel, smirking. Harry thought it was a nice irony that this particular Death Eater, who had stopped the escape of a Muggle-born witch and her family because of his placement in the Department of Magical Transportation, would likely be severely injured when Harry blasted the can of flu powder apart. Two others, Ren Sterling and Ursa Calden, spoke in low voices in the corner, smoking pipes. The last, and Harry could only remember his last name, Tapler, was the first to realize that they were no longer alone. He looked up, gaped, and started to stutter a warning when Harry raised his wand, whispered a spell, and the can of flu powder exploded. Simon Mountney screamed and went down. His face was bloody and dotted with shards of metal. Ren Sterling was slashed from throat to sternum by Ron before the others even drew their wands. As Harry had expected, two of them attempted to escape, but Sirius disemboweled one, and Ginny struck the other in the back with a bludgeoning hex. Both fell to the floor and made no effort to stand, though Harry saw Ursa Calden twitch a little. Still, her back was bent at an impossible angle. Those jerky movements were her last. Sectum Sempra, Harry said, and Jack Butler toppled over, blood spraying from his throat. It had taken less than a minute. Harry, Ginny, Ron, and Sirius pointed their wands at Aggie Lafferty. The wizard had wet himself, and the stench of urine combined with the other unpleasant smells in the house. Harry waved his wand, and Lafferty was bound with black ropes to his chair. You know, Harry said, this entire year, I never even thought that you were a Death Eater. I should have guessed. You were always willing to give Lucius Malfoy an interview, weren't you? I thought you were just a fool, like almost everyone at the Ministry. I Lafferty stammered. You're not a Death Eater? Sirius asked. He slashed the left arm of the wizard's robes, revealing the dark mark. Unfortunately for you, this says otherwise. He forced me, Lafferty said. His eyes were wide and panicked. Sirius Black, you're supposed to be Potter's enemy. Funny thing about that is, Sirius said, my godson's allies are even better hidden than Voldemort's. You make yourselves easy marks when you torture people and murder them. I never. The Burrow family in Bath, Harry said. You were there 2 weeks ago when a Muggle dwelling went up in flames. A mother, father, and 3 children burned to death. 3 days ago, you participated in the torture of Hollis Kepler of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. You have no proof, Lafferty said. When not the Ministry, scum. Ron curled his lip. We don't need more evidence than our own eyes. Or Alastair Moody's eye, as the case may be. But there was a scuffle and a quiet sound, and Harry whirled around, already thinking the spell. But he was too late. There was a loud bang and a flash of green light aimed directly at Ginny. He moved, but he was not quick enough. But Sirius was. He tackled Ginny to the ground, and the killing curse struck the wall at the exact height of Ginny's head. Rage and fear thundered through Harry's veins, and he whipped back around and yelled Petri Ficus Totalis, and watched as Simon Mountney stiffened up. With slow, deliberate movements, Harry walked over to him and snapped his wand in two. Simon watched, helpless and unable to move. "I don't think we need to talk anymore," Harry said grimly. He helped Sirius and Ginny to their feet. He trembled. If Sirius had waited even one more moment. "Let's go." "But aren't we? We're going to burn the house down," Harry said. He did not feel the need to mention that Lafferty and Mountney would still be alive when they did so. He was barely aware of the fact that he left the sitting room, left the house, and walked out to the street. They lined up on the sidewalk. Harry pointed his wand and whispered, "Incendio!" Ginny, Ron, and Sirius echoed him. Harry watched the blaze light up the night sky. He took deep, shuddering breaths. Ginny gripped his arm tightly. He looked down at her and saw that she was pale and trembling just as much as he was. "Sirius," Harry said fervently. "Thank you." "Anytime, Harry," Sirius said quietly. Hermione was waiting outside on the porch for them in Godric's Hollow. She let out a wordless cry of relief and threw herself in Ron's arms. Ron hugged her back tightly, and they swayed a little. Harry took the opportunity to crush Ginny to him. He did not trust himself to speak to her just yet. He was afraid that when he opened his mouth, he would try to forbid her from ever placing herself into danger again. That would not go over well. "Well," Sirius said, "I think we could all use a good drink. What say we head to Grimmauld Place? We'll make Creatures weak by allowing him to wait on us hand and foot." "That's true," Hermione said. Harry exchanged a weak grin with Ron. Hermione had learned throughout the last months that Creature was not in any way, shape, or form slave. Harry often thought that the house elf had a subtle way of manipulating all of them to get his way, which generally meant that they spent more time at Grimmauld Place. Then again, sometimes Creature was not so subtle about it. He'd moved their supply of liquor to the basement kitchen of the Black family home, and had charmed it so it changed to water when they tried to bring it over to Godric's Hollow. Harry eyed Ginny. She had color back in her cheeks, and her jaw was set so tightly that Harry knew that if he asked her if she was sure she was up to it, he would sleep alone for a week. Possibly two. He sighed, and he saw her lips twitch. Creature, Harry thought, is not the only one who knows how to manipulate people. "Masters, mistresses," Creature greeted them. "Master Neville, Master Severus, and Mistress Luna are already here." "What?" Harry gaped. "Snape, Neville, and Luna are here? Where are they?" "Creature brought them food in the blue room," Creature said. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Ginny were already thundering up the stairs. Harry hoped that this was not bad news in any way. What if Umbridge had somehow found out something? What if Neville and Luna were on the run? Things would get complicated. "Hi, Guinevere." "Hi, Lancelot." "Hi, Arthur," Luna said brightly. She and Neville sat playing Exploding Snap with Mr. Ollivander. Snape conferred quietly in the corner with Moody. Harry's racing heartbeat slowed. Nothing appeared to be too terribly wrong. "Hi, everyone," Harry said. "Neville, Luna, what are you doing here?" "Professor Snape brought us," Neville said. "How did the evening go? Are the Death Eaters dead?" Luna asked. "Dead as dead can get," Ron confirmed. "All 6 of them." "What about Umbridge?" Ginny asked. She directed this question to Snape. "Doesn't she have ways of knowing when students are out of bed after curfew?" "Yes," Snape said curtly, "but those ways require her to be awake. I gave her a very powerful sleeping draft, but not the draft of living death," Neville muttered. "Perhaps someday, Longbottom," Snape said. "That's great," Ron said enthusiastically. Harry wondered why Snape had done this. He eyed the other man. Snape's face was completely blank, but Harry suspected that Snape had known that Harry and the others would need company. Remus was in Bulgaria, taking steps to protect the secret of the Elder Wand. Tonks and Kingsley were on duty, pretending to search for Harry. and to see his friends outside of the room of requirement was a blessing unlooked for. "Do not look at me like that, Potter," Snape said. Harry raised his brow, attempting to act cool, but he could not stop a small smile. "I wouldn't dream of it. I feared that Longbottom would do something rash and kill Umbridge," Snape lied. Harry's smile widened. He has become increasingly angry toward her. "As I do not want to fill out the required paperwork, nor do I wish to deal with that complication, I brought him here to calm him down." "I'm sure," Harry said, smirking. "Where's Albus?" Snape took a sip of fire whiskey and grimaced. "He had an unexpected meeting." "Harry," Sirius said testily. A glass of fire whiskey levitated in front of Harry's eyes. "Are you going to have a drink or what?" Harry grinned at him and lifted his glass in a toast. "To a plan well executed and the fact that you saved my heart tonight." That required explanation, and the next half hour went by quickly. Sirius told it and acted out a few scenes, with such dramatic flair that Hermione screamed and Neville squeaked when he told how the killing curse had missed Ginny by an inch. Harry felt a wave of relief again as he looked at Ginny. She winked at him and refilled her glass. Ron shared his with Hermione, and Neville appeared to be drinking them at an alarming rate. The scars on Neville's hand were red and livid. "I think we ought to go after Umbridge next," Ron said, apparently thinking along the same lines as Harry. Neville laughed. "Please do." They spent the next hour plotting different ways to bring down Umbridge. As they also consumed more fire whiskey than they ought to, each grew more unlikely than the last. Harry's head was spinning slightly, Ginny was a warm weight in his lap, and he roared with laughter. "No, no, no," Neville shouted. His face was flushed with drink, and he downed 2 inches of fire whiskey in one gulp. "That would never work, Hermione. I think we should make her right with a great big blood quill that cuts right through her heart." "Even blood quills are fallible, Longbottom," Snape said coldly. "Have you not learned anything at all in the 5 years of your magical education? Umbridge has no heart. Even if the quill were the size of Hagrid, it would still be impossible." "We could just use a big knife," Sirius pointed out, "and cut out her lungs." "You are as foolish as always, Black," Snape said. "If she is one of the undead, as I highly suspect she is, then she does not have to breathe. We will have to decapitate her." "Oh!" Ron shouted. Hermione jumped. "I've got it! I've got it!" "What is it, Lancelot?" Luna asked, but Ron was laughing too hard to make any sense. "Wedge-Eberlervin Center Voldemort." "What?" Harry said blankly. "English, Ron," Hermione said patiently. "Let's give her a love potion and send her to Voldemort," Ron said ecstatically. Nothing could possibly go wrong with that plan. Either Voldemort would fuck her, and I doubt she'd survive that, or he'd kill her, or Bellatrix would do it for him. "Ron!" Ginny shouted, while Harry roared with laughter. Neville actually sank down onto the floor. He was laughing so hard. Sirius pounded the arm of his chair with his fist, and Harry thought he even might have heard a chuckle from Snape. "That is disgusting." "It fits," Ron insisted. "It's perfect." You know, Harry was suddenly struck by a thought that filled him with horror. "I reckon I'm glad Voldemort is a cold son of a bitch. What if I felt him having sex with some witch?" Ron sprayed out his fire whiskey. "No wonder why Voldemort's so cranky. He's a virgin." Harry's belly actually hurt from laughing so hard. The room rang with it. It was so loud, in fact, that it took him a while to realize that they had company. He heard a gasp. It sounded feminine, so he turned his head to greet Tonks and tell her to grab a glass. And his heart nearly failed. Mrs. Weasley stood in the doorway with her hands over her mouth and her eyes wide and darting from Ron to Ginny and then to Harry. Mr. Weasley stood behind her, speechless and confused. Bill and Charlie were staring at each other. Fleur Delacour's mouth was open in a perfect O shape. Percy's mouth was slightly parted. He did not look as surprised as the rest of his family. Even the twins were there, both looking as though they'd been hit in the head with a very large stick. Albus Dumbledore stood behind them. He met Harry's eyes steadily. "They've chosen Harry," he said simply.
Thank you for being with us, Harry Potter fans. We are continuing on with the new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always, by Dead Woodpecker. We're at Chapter 30, Interlude, Molly Weasley.
Chapter 30, Interlude, Molly Weasley. Chapter text. Molly Weasley. We have to go to Dumbledore with this, Bill said. Molly stared around at her family. Bill's face was set and white. His girlfriend Fleur gripped his hand tightly. Charlie was pretending to darn a balaclava, but Molly knew that her son was just as frightened as she was. Her twins were serious for once. There was no laughter at all on their faces, only the sort of fear that made them look older than their 18 years. Only Percy seemed almost relaxed. Arthur, she said quietly. Bill's right, he said. Dumbledore really is the only person we can trust, you know. Even if he doesn't believe us, he'll listen. We'll send him an owl, Bill said. Immediately. We can't just sit on this any longer. Charlie rose quickly. We'll use Hermes, he said. He'll get there faster than Errol. Don't say anything important, Fred said. That Umbridge woman is watching the owls. We know she is. We'll just ask him about Ron and Ginny, Charlie said. Nothing at all strange about that. Merlin knows we've been pretty loud about wanting to find them. He scrawled out a note and then read it aloud to the entire family. Within minutes, Hermes was winging his way to Hogwarts, to Albus Dumbledore. No, Molly thought, seeing that her youngest son and daughter were still gone. Not the entire family. Not for the first time. She wondered if they were dead. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Ron's and Ginny's hands sat firmly at mortal peril, where they had been since the morning after that horrible row, and she had found their beds empty and cold. The trial of the century was over, and Molly could only feel relief that her family had not been dragged into it even more than it already had been. It had been the right decision. Insisting that Ron and Ginny stay away from Harry Potter had protected Molly's family in ways that she had half expected. Still, she felt terrible for poor Sirius Black, who had already lost so much. The anguish in his voice had followed her all the way home. 4 of her sons and her daughter waited in the sitting room, obviously waiting to hear the verdict. What happened, Mum? Percy asked quietly. He's been given a life sentence to Azkaban, Arthur said tiredly. He looked just as relieved as Molly felt. Things could have been so much worse. It could have been Ron and Ginny under the Imperius curse. Percy shook his head, looking rather dazed. I just can't believe it. I always thought Harry was a decent sort. Molly glanced at her daughter. Ginny had her head in her hands, and she was squeezing hanks of her long hair in her hands. Molly did not think that a boy who would intimately touch a 12-year-old was a decent sort. It made her furious just to think about it. Well, she said, making an effort to keep her voice steady. I'm sure they'll find him soon, and then it'll be over. Ron muttered something under his breath. What was that, dear? She smiled, reaching over to pat his shoulder. Poor Ron. It must be terribly difficult for him to have his former best friend turn out to be dark. Nothing, Ron said. Molly set about preparing dinner for her family, while Arthur went into greater detail about what had happened at the trial. She was extremely grateful that the children were not allowed inside the court. Perhaps Ron and Ginny would have been called to testify that would have hurt them so badly. Though it was possible they might have spoken for Harry, as Augusta and Zeno had. I just don't know what those two were thinking, Molly thought grimly. Mom, Fred said, is dinner ready? Just a moment, dear, Molly said. She used her wand to send the knives, chopping the carrots, and, with a flourish, sent a creamy sauce over the noodles. Arthur levitated the plates and silverware over to the table, and they all sat down. She watched Ron and Ginny closely. They only picked at their food and kept glancing at each other out the corner of their eyes. She was about to say something when Arthur did it for her. I can imagine how you must be feeling. No, you can't, Ginny said sharply. We can, Molly assured her. They could speak later about how Ginny was not to use that tone when addressing her parents, no matter how hard she tried. I had a cousin who joined the Death Eaters. We were of an age, and I thought I knew him quite well. And he was there that night when your uncles died. Ginny, my dearest, we know what betrayal feels like. You think I don't? Ginny shouted. Her face was bright red. Maybe I think that the entire wizarding world is betraying Harry, and so are you. Ginny, Arthur said, how can you possibly say that? He used unforgivable curses. He's been evading the ministry. Ginny's nostrils flared, and her lips were white. Molly stared, almost fascinated by the rage on her daughter's face. They never confirmed that he used more than one unforgivable, Ginny said. Still, Molly said, the use of just one requires a life sentence to Azkaban. You are far too young to understand this, which is why I am making allowance for your tone, young lady, but the Imperius curse is a horrible thing. It is undetectable, and even when good people are put under it, they can be forced to do horrible things. That doesn't sound too hard to understand, Ron put in. Molly could not quite place his tone, but she did not like it. She knew that Ron and Ginny must be feeling horribly betrayed, but it was not advisable to let them continue. They would need to face this sooner or later, and something as truly heart-wrenching as this would only get worse the longer they ignored it. Don't speak to your mother that way, Arthur said. Percy, Molly said. Fred, George, I want you to go to your rooms. Now. Molly stared at her two youngest while the others filed silently out of the kitchen. She did not fully understand why both of them were glaring at opposite walls with such defiance. Didn't they realize that she was only trying to help? She was trying to protect them? The Imperius curse. We know what it does, Ginny said. But no one even bothered asking why Harry did it, did they? What if he had a good reason? There is no good reason for it, Arthur said firmly. None at all. Ron snorted. Molly felt it like a physical blow. Her son just laughed at them. Ron's long, lanky body was stretched out in his chair. He looked entirely relaxed. This seemed so wrong. She could not believe that her son was taking this so lightly, that she felt as though she were looking at a complete stranger. She traded glances with Arthur, and she saw that her husband feared the same thing. I am very disappointed in you, young man, Arthur said quietly. Ron jerked as though he had been struck. Very. I don't know where we went wrong when we raised you, but the fact that you consider the use of an unforgivable to be funny is against everything your mother and I stand for. I don't think it's funny, Ron said. I just think that it's pretty hypocritical of you to say that, Dad. The Ministry used it loads of times in the last war. That was different, Arthur said. Ron and Ginny exchanged glances. Both of them appeared to be clenching their fists. Harry Potter is not a Ministry employee, Molly said. He's obviously a very confused and disturbed young man. Don't say another word, Ginny said through gritted teeth. Ginevra Weasley, Arthur yelled. Even Molly jumped. She could not remember the last time Arthur had raised his voice to one of the children. Do not make me silence you. You might as well, Ginny said, unafraid. You're obviously not listening to anything I'm saying. I trust that Harry had a good reason. Harry Potter is not to be trusted. Arthur bellowed. I've known it for ages. He's only proven it time and again. Ron stood up so suddenly that his chair went flying backward. You know what I think he's proven time and again, Dad? The fact that he'd do anything to save people. What if I told you he? Ron, Ginny said so quietly that Molly could barely hear her. Don't. That's enough, Molly said. Go to your rooms. Both of you. You're both going to have a good, long think about whom and what you're defending. Do not make the mistake of choosing to side with Harry, Arthur added. And you stay in your rooms until your mother and I come to get you. Without another word, Ron and Ginny left the kitchen. Molly fairly gasped for breath. What had happened to her little girl who loved sunshine and flying on a broom? And the son who used to be so insecure about being the youngest son? Where had her babies gone? She asked herself that same question when she entered Ginny's room the next morning. Arthur was the one who found the note that read, We've chosen Harry. You should too. She put her face in her hands. Arthur's hand came up to stroke her back. She allowed herself to cry, but only for a few moments. I expect we'll be waiting a while, she said. I'll make us dinner. He might not even reply tonight. She found solace in cooking. She always had. There was nothing that Molly Weasley loved more than ensuring that her family was fed and well cared for. I hope they're eating all right, wherever they are, she thought. She ignored the fact that a few tears spilled into the soup she was making. Her family was silent throughout the meal. Molly found herself watching anxiously out the window for another owl, even though she knew that there was no way that even Hermes could reach Hogwarts. It would take a few hours at least. Night stretched on. Molly felt sick to her stomach with fear and worry. The meal she had eaten sat in her stomach like a rock. The burrow was unnaturally quiet. I think we should try to go to bed, she finally said at midnight. It'll have to wait until... But she was interrupted by a bright burst of flame, and Dumbledore's phoenix appeared in the center of the room. He dropped a note in the middle of the floor. Arthur started to reach for it when there was another blast of heat, and the phoenix disappeared again. "What does it say, Arthur?" she whispered. Word flew to his office. He said simply, "Right now." They were galvanized into motion. Molly lifted her wand and summoned traveling cloaks enough for all of them. They gathered around the hearth, still fastening them underneath their chins. Molly knew that they must look a fright. All of them were rumpled and sleep-deprived. But she couldn't stretch herself to care about that for once. Dumbledore would understand. "I'll go first," Arthur said. He stepped into the flames, shouted "Hogwarts, Headmaster's office," and whirled away. Molly waited several breaths before she followed. Arthur dusted himself off, and she did the same. Bill came next and almost knocked her over. "Sorry, Mum," he murmured. Fleur followed next. Within minutes, Percy, Charlie, Fred, and George arrived. It was only then that Molly looked around and found Dumbledore seated behind his desk, staring at them. "Good evening," he said pleasantly, as if he often entertained disheveled guests at this hour of the night. They greeted him. Molly gazed around the room, trying to prolong the moment. The portraits were all awake and appeared to be avidly interested in what was happening. She wished there weren't so many of them. "None of you move," Dumbledore said. Molly jolted before she realized that it was to the portraits that Dumbledore spoke. One of them snorted and rolled his eyes. Apparently, he had little respect for the current headmaster. "You wish to speak to me about your son and daughter?" Molly licked her lips. "Well, in a manner of speaking. We didn't know how else to get you to grant us an audience," Arthur said. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. "Oh, strange things have been happening," Bill said. "And we don't have anyone else to turn to. Actually, we know. My brothers told me," Molly began, and felt a little stab of anguish at the thought of Gideon and Fabian. What if Ron and Ginny had already met But she didn't let herself finish the thought. "That you were once the head of the Order of the Phoenix." "That is correct," Dumbledore said. "I take it you are here to ask me to begin it once again in opposition to Harry Potter." Molly bit her lip. None of the other members of her family said anything. He surveyed them calmly. "It must be difficult for you, as your son and daughter are in league with him." Several of the portraits on the walls coughed. One opened his mouth to speak, but Dumbledore shot at a quelling look. Molly's heart was galloping in her chest. What if he dismissed their concerns simply because they were family? "No," she said. I don't want you to..." But she couldn't continue. Dumbledore looked genuinely shocked for a moment before he leaned back in his chair. Something shifted in the room, though Molly had no idea what. The portraits were staring at her even more than ever. She felt herself flush under the scrutiny. She straightened herself up. "I suppose we'd better begin at the beginning. It all started, really, when we had a row with Ron and Ginny. They've always been friendly with Harry Potter, since the moment we met them. We had concerns, as you know, but they're both very stubborn. Then they disappeared, leaving a note that they'd gone to wherever Harry Potter went after he left. I am the chief warlock on the Wisingamot," he said gently. "I heard your testimony. You said that you think he'd bewitched them. You suspected that he used the Imperius curse upon them, as he did to Cedric Diggory. And we did," Molly said. "We really did. You have to admit that he's done some very suspicious things. Everyone knows that he used that curse." "Yes," Dumbledore said. "There is no denying that he did so. But you no longer believe that he used it upon your children? You think now that they are with him willingly." There was a sudden chill in the air, and Molly wrapped her cloak around herself more tightly. "Yes," Bill said. "We do." Dumbledore sighed and rose from his chair. Molly knew that they were about to be dismissed. "Thank you for this information. I know it must be difficult for you." "Wait," Arthur said. He sounded a bit desperate. "That isn't really why we're here. I mean, it is. But we have more to tell you." "The entire country went mad while I was in Romania," Charlie said. "I came back the day before Augusta Longbottom and Zeno Lovegood were murdered, and the Granger couple was discovered missing. And everyone blamed Harry Potter," Arthur put in. "We were pulled off all our regular jobs at the ministry, and we were all given the task of finding him and putting him on trial. Like my son said," Molly said, "it was complete madness. and for a while we were swept away in it. I'll be the first to admit that. But once things settled a little, we started to actually think about it. The full weight of Dumbledore's stare was on her now. And, he said, we found a little funny that we weren't killed too, Arthur said. It isn't a secret that Harry Potter's closest friends were related to Augusta and Zeno. That's what put the suspicion on him, as I'm sure you know. Many suspected that he killed them to tighten the control he had over them. I'm aware of this, Dumbledore said. Explain to me why you find it odd that you weren't killed. Because he didn't have a reason to hurt Augusta and Zeno, Molly explained. They didn't, by all accounts, they liked him. And we didn't. And he never tried to bewitch us into liking him. He could have taken away our wills. And you feel that because you have been quite vocal about your distrust for him, that if anyone were to be targeted, it would be you? Dumbledore asked. He was so calm, so unflappable, that Molly felt a momentary urge to shake him. That if Potter was really the monster that the Ministry believes him to be, you and your entire family would be dead? Yes, Arthur said. And that isn't the only odd thing, Bill said. I had to go out of the country on Gringotts business right after they were killed. When I came home and visited the burrow, I noticed that there were very powerful wards around it. I didn't think anything of it until Dad asked me if I would set some up for him. I didn't set up any of the wards, Arthur said, and I initially thought that the Ministry had, but when I talked to Rufus Scrimgeour about it, he said that it wasn't anything they'd done. What kind of wards were these? Dumbledore asked. Subtle ones, Bill answered promptly. We never would have noticed if I hadn't caught sight of one. It's taken months of research for me to even be able to name them. But Dumbledore, they're blood wards, which means it had to have been keyed by a member of the Weasley family, and it wasn't any of us. So it had to be either Ron or Ginny. Do you think they may have done this in order to protect you from Harry Potter? Molly felt uncertain all of a sudden. What if he didn't believe them? He seemed determined to point his finger at Harry Potter at every turn. No, Arthur said. Dad, Charlie said. We have to tell him everything, lay it all out for him. You have my full attention, Dumbledore nodded. Whatever it is you have to say, I am listening. I'm sure you have heard of my attack? Arthur asked. The Ministry had us on a rotating system, guarding the door to the Department of Mysteries. They didn't tell us why. I'm the one who suggested this, Dumbledore said. Well, Arthur said, we think that we were guarding the prophecy. It is a well-known fact that that department studies prophecies and the like. So, did you think that Harry Potter would attempt to retrieve it? I thought it a possibility, Dumbledore said. I was guarding the door one night, and the snake attacked out of nowhere, Arthur said. I had fallen asleep. I woke up to find myself being bitten again and again. I thought I was going to die, but someone saved me. My glasses had fallen, and I can't see anything without them. But someone with black hair healed me enough so that I did not die. I don't remember anything after that, but someone with black hair? Dumbledore asked. Surely you aren't suggesting that it was Harry Potter who saved you? Molly felt a rush of disorientation. She remembered sitting in here, accusing Harry Potter of opening the Chamber of Secrets and possibly murdering her daughter and son. How odd that she was now attempting to defend him from the man who had been so sure that he could not do such a thing. I think it was, Arthur said. I can't be certain, of course. We don't have any solid proof. It's all rather circumstantial. Not all of it, Fred spoke up unexpectedly. Professor, we know Neville Longbottom. We also know his history and what happened to his parents. He wouldn't side with the wizard who helped the Lestranges go free any more than I'd eat flobberworms. But I think it's insane. Neville would never help the Death Eater that tortured his parents into insanity go free, George said firmly. That's what really put us off to the way the world's gone mad. Dumbledore did not say anything for so long that Molly began to grow even more afraid. If he stopped listening now, it is a common belief that Mr. Longbottom and Miss Lovegood severed ties with Potter after the murder of their parents. Tell him about that map. Molly ordered her twins. Right, Fred said, looking uncomfortable. Well, we had this map, you see, of Hogwarts. It showed where everyone was, and where all the secret passageways were George put in. It went missing back in our 5th year. We thought Potter'd taken it, actually, because it was right after he messed around with Ginny. And he knew we'd be watching him, Fred said. We didn't see it until the first day of term last year, George said. But then it was lying under Fred's pillow. How extraordinary, Dumbledore murmured. We think Neville put it there, Fred informed him. He was seen coming out of the dorm by one of our year mates. We asked him about it, but he said he had no idea what we were talking about. We think he was lying, George said. And Neville's been up to something all year, even before he disappeared. He used to be really shy. But he started making loads of friends in the other houses, Fred said. We watch him on the map, he admitted. We thought he was acting fishy. And did you see him do anything fishy? Dumbledore asked. That's the thing, George said. He and a bunch of other students would disappear off the map for hours at a time. We couldn't rumble how they were leaving. That is very odd, Dumbledore said. Do you believe he was up to anything nefarious? No, Fred shook his head firmly. Not at all. He and Luna always stand up to Umbridge. No offense, George said. But she's horrible. And she was using a blood quill on Neville, Fred said. We heard him talking about it with Dean Thomas. He said that she was trying to get Potter's whereabouts from him. And then Dean asked if he'd told her. And Neville said that no matter how many times she made him cut his own hand, he wouldn't tell her where he was or what he was up to. Dean said that he'd better not, George finished. You've come to me with a school-wide conspiracy to protect Harry Potter. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. No, Molly heard herself shout. That isn't why we've come. We think that. But she was still so afraid, she couldn't bring herself to say it. Allow me to attempt to piece together what you were saying, Dumbledore said. You believe that Harry Potter might be protecting you. You no longer believe that he is as criminal as you originally thought. You believe that your son and daughter are with him by choice. You do not believe that he was the one to murder Augusta Longbottom and Zeno Lovegood. You also do not believe that he was responsible for the mass breakout of Azkaban. You, Arthur, believe that he saved your life. Yes, Molly said in a small voice. That's what we're saying. One of the portraits made a rude noise. Molly thought it might have been the same one who had snorted earlier, but she could not be sure. Enough, Phineas, Dumbledore said. Do you have any theories as to who killed Augusta Longbottom and Zeno Lovegood? Molly closed her eyes. We think, she whispered, we think it was you-know-who. We think he who must not be named is back. It's the only explanation that makes sense, Arthur said quickly. We know it's a wild theory, Bill said, but no one knows what really happened that night when you-know-who killed the Potters and tried to kill Harry. I believe that you yourself have always said that he'd come back someday. I did, Dumbledore said. I have to confess to some surprise that you have come to this conclusion. It has been apparent to me for quite some time that you distrust Harry Potter. I didn't. Percy spoke for the first time since they had arrived. I admit that the fact that he used an unforgivable curse threw me for a while. But Harry threw himself in front of a curse for me. The Cruciatus Curse, in fact, as I'm sure you remember. I remember, Dumbledore said. I also remember that you too, Molly, Arthur, have been as frightened as the terrible power he has professed to have as the rest of the wizarding world. And Molly had to admit that she still was. The idea of it frightened her a great deal. But she was more frightened of losing her children to you-know-who, just as she had lost her brothers. We're more frightened of you-know-who, Arthur said, echoing her thoughts. Dumbledore stared at Molly, and then her husband, and then her sons, and then Fleur so intensely that Molly felt like her soul had been laid bare. She was sure that the others felt the same. What, Dumbledore began, do you intend to do? We want to help them, of course. Charlie said loudly. If it's you-know-who, then he's after Harry Potter. And if he's after him, then my brother and sister are in danger. We have a clock, Molly said through numb lips, that shows us where everyone in the family is at. It has work and school and home and traveling on it, but Ron's and Ginny's hands aren't pointed at any of those. They're pointed at mortal peril, and we intend to help them, Arthur said firmly when Molly's voice trailed away. Just to be clear, Dumbledore said. Molly had the feeling that he was pushing them towards something, though she did not know what. How could they state it any clearer than that? You're choosing to align yourself with Harry Potter? You trust that he is, indeed, on the right side? Yes, Molly managed with a shaky voice. A year ago, she would have said that she would never stand before Albus Dumbledore and claim that she trusted Harry Potter. Not even a few months ago. But she could not ignore the facts, and she hoped that Dumbledore did not either. "All of you." "Yes," said Arthur. "Yes," chorused all of her sons and Fleur. Molly did not know how it had happened that Fleur Delacour had gained a place with her family, but it seemed only right to have her here. She took her eyes off Fleur and brought them back to Dumbledore. He seemed quite pleased about something, not at all appropriate in the situation. He stood up rather abruptly, wrote something hastily on a scrap of parchment, gave it to the Phoenix, and murmured something in too low a voice for Molly to hear. Her heart started pounding rather abruptly. Was he telling the Ministry? Were they about to be handed over to them? He grabbed what looked like a metal bowl with strange runes around the lip out of a cupboard. Molly could only watch, feeling more confused by the moment, as he bustled around. "Professor, what—" George began. "Not now, Mr. Weasley," Dumbledore said. "Now listen to me. We're going to number 12, Grimmauld Place. Repeat that after me, and then use the flu to get there." "Number 12, Grimmauld Place," Molly and her family repeated. "After you," he said. Molly was the last of her family to leave the same way they had come. She caught a last glimpse of Dumbledore. He was beaming at the portraits, and the portraits had started to cheer. Before she could think about this oddity, she felt herself whisked away through the flames. She found herself in a large kitchen. The other members of her family stared around at it. They looked just as bewildered as she felt. "What the hell?" Bill said blankly. Molly could not even bring herself to admonish him for cursing. Several things happened at once. Dumbledore stepped out of the flue, and Molly heard her daughter yell Ron at the top of her voice. She was not in the dark kitchen, and she sounded quite far away. "But that was Ginny's voice," her little girl. "That is disgusting," Ginny yelled again. For a moment, Molly simply could not move. The rest of her family was equally frozen. She whirled on Dumbledore. "You knew? You knew. And you didn't. I can't believe you didn't tell us." "Excuse me for a moment." Dumbledore ignored her. He was looking concerned and distracted while he stared at the ceiling. "I believe they might need a warning." "No," Molly said. "I'm going up right now. Dumbledore, I simply can't believe." But she interrupted herself by fleeing the kitchen, her family on her heels. She followed the sound of voices and loud laughter. Her babies sounded so happy. A low voice, Molly was certain that it was Harry's, said something that Molly just didn't understand. She could not possibly have heard what she thought she heard. And then she heard Ron say, quite clearly, "No wonder why Voldemort's so cranky. He's a virgin." Molly stopped dead in her tracks. She had never heard you-know-who spoken of so irreverently. She glanced around, heart racing, feeling quite as though the Dark Wizard would jump out at them and attack her son. But the only thing that happened was a burst of raucous, immoderate laughter issuing from behind the open door to the room only a few feet away. "Molly," Dumbledore said. She ignored him and followed the sound of her children's voices. She hadn't seen them for so long. She ought to have known that Ron, Ginny, and Harry were not the only ones at Grimmauld Place. If Dumbledore had known, who else knew? She had her answer when she stepped into the room. Sirius Black had her arm around Ron's shoulder and was ruffling his hair with the other hand. Severus Snape sat in the corner, his lips twitching. Hermione Granger, who had not been smuggled out of the country for her own safety, apparently, sat on the floor, leaning up against her son's legs. Neville Longbottom was laughing so hard that he appeared to be unable to breathe. Luna Lovegood, however, stared straight at Molly, an inscrutable expression on her face. And Ginny sat on Harry's lap, and she was gazing down at him with such a look of tenderness and affection that Molly's heart was pierced with the truth that her daughter was in love with Harry Potter. And it was as deep and as real as what Molly felt for Arthur. She gasped. Harry turned to look at her, and the laughing look on his face was swiftly replaced by one of utter shock. He looked from her to Arthur and the rest of the family. His mouth was slightly open. Ginny, sensing the tension, turned as well. Molly could only stare at her. She looked so different. She seemed so much older, as if it had been 5 years since Molly had seen her instead of 9 months. "They've chosen Harry," Dumbledore said quietly. He had followed them from the kitchen without Molly even noticing it. Molly saw a flash of pure, fierce joy in Harry's green eyes. It made her stagger, and Arthur gripped her elbow to steady her. But she watched that emotion fade away into something colder. His mouth hardened, and the room seemed to grow colder. "What the bloody hell?" Ron shouted. He had risen halfway to his feet, knocking Hermione over in the process. "Sorry, Hermione. What the bloody hell are you lot doing here?" Molly had spent a great deal of time and energy in the last few months preparing for this meeting. She had been very afraid that she would see that stranger she had glimpsed in her son off and on throughout the last 5 years. But Ron, he was Ron. He looked confused and angry and hurt, and as much as Molly regretted the fact she had obviously hurt him quite a lot during that row, but she was glad that his eyes were angry and not cold. "What do you mean they've chosen?" Ginny said. Her voice was icy and calm. Molly turned her eyes to her daughter. Ginny steadfastly refused to return her look. Her jaw was clenched tight. "They've chosen," Dumbledore repeated. "They came to my office tonight and told me they thought that Voldemort had returned, and they wished to help." "It's a bit late, don't you think?" Harry asked. "Bully for them, though. I don't think I've ever been more surprised in my life. I thought they'd come face to face with Voldemort and still accuse their own children of being evil." He looked around, as if expecting someone to stop him. But Ron and Ginny said nothing. Hermione Granger, Neville Longbottom, and Sirius Black were stony-faced and silent. Snape had an inscrutable look on his face, and Luna Lovegood merely watched as if she found the proceedings mildly interesting. Molly opened and closed her mouth, but she could not think of anything to say. Words had deserted her. "Now listen," Bill said angrily. "You couldn't have expected us to know, or to trust." "That is my point," Harry shouted. His cheeks were flushed from more than the fire whiskey he had consumed, and his black hair stood on end. "Look around. You see these people? They didn't let any fucking articles turn them away before they even met me. And you," he pointed at Molly and Arthur. It felt like a malediction. "Ought to have trusted your children. They'd." Molly began helplessly. The young man who stood before her was livid, but underneath the rage was a deep well of pain that she could not even begin to understand. "They've changed. Not to mention what you did to our sister," Charlie put in. He had the strongest temper of all Molly's sons, and she had expected him to step in before this, though she fervently wished that he would remain silent. "Don't think that just because I know Voldemort's back I've forgotten that." Harry sneered. "I'm surprised you've forgotten my terrible fucking power." "What? Not worried that I'm going to, what was it? Lead the family down a dark and dangerous path? Not so afraid that I'm going to bewitch you." "No, we're changing your tune a bit. Try to see it from our perspective," Arthur said. "I have tried." Harry roared. "I've tried for almost 3 years. But the moment you broke your daughter's heart, do you have any idea how many times she's cried herself to sleep because of you? I stopped understanding." "Harry," Sirius murmured. Molly glanced at Arthur. Her husband looked just as bewildered as she felt, but she had a growing sense of dread that they had made a more dreadful mistake than they had thought. Why was he lashing out at them? And why had her son and daughter moved to stand behind him? She had the feeling that she had walked into something far more complicated than she had ever dreamed. There was a long moment when they all simply stared at one another. Molly felt like she was standing on the edge of a chasm. She and Arthur, Bill and Fleur, Charlie and Percy, and the twins stood on one side, and the others watched them with accusation in their eyes from the other. "What the hell is going on?" Charlie asked. "I think our concerns were legitimate." "You understand nothing," Ginny said. She and Ron looked to Harry. "You want to understand?" he said in a low voice. "Albus." The pensive, the strange bowl was produced and placed upon the table next to 2 empty bottles of fire whiskey. The silence had changed. There was an air of expectation, even one of relief. Molly felt like she was floundering and lost. Harry raised his wand to his temple. He pulled out a long, silvery strand of what looked like lightning made nearly solid. He flung it into the bowl with a sharp gesture. It made a rather loud slapping sound. He repeated this action. "You slap, we'll slap. Understand, slap, slap. Everything." "Harry," Dumbledore murmured. "Don't do anything you'll regret." Harry stared at Molly and the rest of the family. Quite deliberately, He added several more silvery strands to the bowl. I can't imagine why I would regret it. Is that a pensieve? Bill asked. What? Just go, Harry ordered. Molly took a deep breath and stepped forward. She poked her head in, and her body followed. There was a rushing sensation in her belly, and she found herself on a scene of devastation. Before she could gasp or scream, her family joined her. Bill shouted, Merlin, when did this happen? What are we seeing? Arthur asked. Harry's memories, Bill said. That silvery stuff was his memories? Fred asked. He was very pale. Molly forced herself to look around. They were at Hogwarts, but that was impossible. It was demolished, destroyed. Bodies were strewn all over the grounds and the steps like broken rag dolls. Blood made the stones a deep, sick red instead of gray. Molly clapped her hand over her mouth. Mum, George said in a strangled voice. Mum, that's me. Molly was about to deny it, but there was no mistaking his pale face and shock of red hair. She flicked her eyes between the dead George and the living. The one that lay at her feet was older. But how? The scene whirled around her, and they were again at Hogwarts. This time they were not surrounded by the dead, but by the living and the dead. Hundreds of bodies lined a flat, marble stone. Molly felt herself inexorably pulled toward it. She wanted to see if she knew anyone else. She heard a low, keening wail. There before her was everyone who stood with her and watched this right now. Including Molly herself, she saw them. Arthur, Percy, Fred, barely recognizable. George, Bill, Charlie, even Fleur. And she noticed another wail and saw where her daughter knelt before the stone. It happened for each of them. Each scene battered Molly's heart a little more, until she could not bear to keep her eyes open, but could not seem to look away. Harry giving the twins the money to start the joke shop. Harry laughing immoderately with the twins. Harry proudly wearing his Weasley sweater, standing and carrying on a cordial conversation with Bill. It wasn't exactly the scenes that he showed them. They weren't earth-shattering, at least not on a physical way. There was no loud declaration of how much they thought of Harry as part of the family. But Molly saw it in the way they looked at him and treated him, and a horrible sense that they had missed out on something essential welled up inside her. Flickers of memory drifted past. Ginny weeping, Ron stony-faced. Another long one. The three of them. It was far in the future. They looked terribly old. Stood before a portrait of Dumbledore. You really think we should wait to tell them? Harry asked. Really? Yes, Dumbledore said. Allow them to make the choice to help you. You are not a god, Harry, to subvert free will. It would be remarkably dangerous. They will have to make their own choice. All of them. Even Molly and Arthur. Harry said. Even Mum and Dad. Ginny echoed. Especially your mother and father, Mrs. Potter. Dumbledore said gravely. Mrs. Potter, Molly jolted, and another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. They're married, she thought numbly through a haze of guilt, shame, and grief. He had come back in time to bring them back to life. All three of them. And she had thought the worst things about him. She'd kicked him out of the burrow. No need to worry about that, the older version of Ron said. Mum and Dad will love Harry just as much as they did this time. The memories ended, and Molly found herself rising out of the pensieve and landing on the soft carpet of the sitting room. She was shaking, and she felt ill. She glanced around, not knowing if she could stand to see them. But only Dumbledore, Snape, and Sirius Black remained in the room. They've gone, Sirius said. We have another safe house. Why? Molly whispered. Why didn't? If they just told us. They tried to tell you, Sirius said harshly. They told you every way they knew how that Harry was to be trusted. Harry saved your daughter's life. He took a curse for Percy. Molly fell into a chair. There was a moment's pause, and a glass of tea was placed in her hand. If it is any consolation, Dumbledore said, I think you will regret what he showed you, and how he did it. He is very angry and very hurt. With good reason, Molly said. Everyone else murmured their agreement. After the WWA we've been, we deserve a lot worse, Arthur said. A hell of a lot worse, Bill echoed. Everyone nodded their agreement, except Percy, who looked more thoughtful than sad. Dumbledore cocked his head and looked at them. The heartbreak you feel, the shame and guilt, the fact that you feel you deserve some sort of punishment, and the fact that you will hardly be able to look at him and, to a lesser extent, Ginny and Ron. These are the precise reasons why he is going to regret it. Harry stood, knelt beside her. His arms were wrapped around her, and Molly could see quite clearly that his face was screwed up in a grimace of pain that was as mournful as the grieving sounds Ginny made. Molly stood there for a long time, just staring, hardly able to breathe. A loud voice caught her attention. "Voldemort is dead." Molly recognized Phileas Flitwick's voice. "But the entire flower of a generation has been lost. The price of freedom from tyranny and darkness lies on the marble stone behind me. I would ask you not to forget, but I do not need to. This tragedy will be emblazoned on the minds and hearts of the few of us who survived." The scene shifted again, and Molly found herself standing in the office of the headmaster. "The price was too high," Harry said, and the conversation that followed changed Molly's world forever. The Weasley family drew in a deep breath as one, as a piece of the puzzle clicked into place. "No," Molly murmured. Her thoughts were disjointed, and she barely understood what was happening. But the fact that her son, daughter, and Harry Potter had traveled back in time penetrated. She found her hand in Arthur's grasp. He was squeezing so tightly it hurt. And then they were in the basement kitchen of this house, Grimmauld Place. She sat alone with Harry Potter, and Molly realized that she had loved him like a son. She saw the look in her own eyes, the faith, the trust, the conviction that he would defeat you-know-who. "I've never doubted," Molly heard herself say. "I knew it from the moment you saved Ginny from the Chamber of Secrets, and maybe even before that." Tears streamed down her face as she realized the enormity of the mistake she had made and the hurt she had inflicted. It broke her heart. It broke Arthur's when they were shown a similar scene. Harry had sought out Arthur in a shed, and Arthur had not turned him away. In fact, it looked as though both men were entirely comfortable, almost like father and son.